Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O man of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O man of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O man of God, the church for you doth wait, her strength unequal to her task. Rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man. Rise up, O men of God. Good evening.
Let's edify.
The stage of professionalism and shenanigans. Welcome.
We're late.
Good evening, and again we say good evening, and nobody's talking to us.
No,
That's
but
okay. We
Reba
usually talk for
is
each of us.
here.
We usually talk
Reba
enough for
is
each
here.
of us. Hello,
What,
Reba.
what
She put a heart.
happened last night
What?
What?
that we didn't have evening notification? I was wondering about that.
I had a support group to go to for my diabetes,
You said you were
and
probably going to be at a friend's
O'Shea
thing.
was not up to it. So what?
and
And
I
CJ said he was
was
going to be at a friend's
still
giving thing.
there. I didn't get home till 11:30.
Yeah, so I didn't want to strain my voice all that much.
Got it.
I thought it was
Especially
kind
after
of
doing
funny that CJ, you were asking me if I wanted to help you on Wednesday, even though you knew that I was at a class.
Whoops.
Yeah, I mentioned that when I come in, and I'm like, CJ, I realized why we have young brothers on Wednesdays.
And then I'm like, oh.
There's a particular reason for it.
We are in the book of
Changing topics all of a sudden. He's just like your mother, O'Shea.
He is. Hi, Reba.
We're in the book of
We are in the book of Habakkuk tonight, and let's go ahead and get started on that. Looks like, Reba, you're going to be all by your lonesome until Sam decides to join us. Habakkuk is an interesting book because, first and foremost, Habakkuk in the entire Bible is the only one that bears that name, and nobody knows exactly what it means, really. Nothing's really known about him, except that
He was a prophet philosopher.
yeah, well, it's except for the discernible qualities in his writing. He's the the thing about Habakkuk is his name means embrace. If you look at it in the Hebrew word, but for some reason people want to try to relate it to a Chaldean word, Habakkuk, which we don't know why. They don't know why, but it basically means it basically is because nobody knows exactly what his name means or where he was from or anything like that. We know that he was a prophet of God, but other than that, we're not told what his birthplace was. We're not told what his parentage. We're just told nothing about him. We do know, however, that he was a prophet that prophesied at the same time, or rather, he was a contemporary of Jeremiah. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we already have another one, another contemporary?
Yeah. Who was that?
You had Nehemiah and Ezra?
No.
No.
What? Last week. Who was last
Nahum?
week? Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah, last week we did Nahum.
Nahum, right?
Nahum was last week. And he actually
was he the contemporary?
that's what I'm trying to remember. He was the best estimate was that he prophesied right around 620 BC.
Was it Hosea?
We know whichever one he was actually mentioned in Jeremiah.
I forgot now.
Hosea covered the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, and the kings
Maybe
of
it was
Judah.
Hosea.
What?
Perhaps it was.
Yeah, Hosea had quite the
It must have been Jeremiah.
coverage.
I
June.
thought it was last week we were making that point.
Well, I thought I didn't. We. I mean, we. I thought we put it down as a passage, as a cross reference, but I've not seen my cross reference.
No, wasn't it Jonah that was mentioned somewhere else?
Jonah's mentioned in what? The Kings?
Oh yeah, Jonah was mentioned in Kings.
No, it is Nahum that was a contemporary of Jeremiah. The name is here. All we know about him is that he lived in Judah, probably at Al-Kosh, the location which cannot be determined with certainty, and that he was a contemporary of Jeremiah. So I think I went and looked up that particular passage, but I don't remember now.
Angie's here.
Hello,
Lurking.
Angie. Lurking.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
anyway,
pulled up
so
my Facebook, so Facebook tells me when people are watching.
Angie.
the dates listed for his prophecy, for Habakkuk's prophecy, would be roughly about 608 to 605
Nehemiah was a
Yeah.
contemporary with Jeremiah.
Nehemiah? No.
I think so.
No.
It looked like he was mentioned.
Jeremiah went into captivity. Nehemiah came out of captivity.
Oh, well. Nehemiah mentioned Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he would, because, Jeremiah wrote before.
Right. Okay. I put Jeremiah into the search and saw him mentioned in Nehemiah. Didn't think that one through.
So anyway, Habakkuk has some unique issues, and as I said, he was a contemporary of Jeremiah, which means that he also prophesied before Israel went, and specifically Judah went into captivity. And so we're going to kick it off with Hosea, starting us off with chapter 1. Hello, Carol. Good to see you.
I actually have a verse that lets us know that he was before the Babylonians. Because in 11, God tells Habakkuk that the Babylonian king is going to get haughty and think himself as God. Or imputing then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing this his power unto his God. Oh. It didn't read quite like I remembered it, but anyways.
And another interesting introduction to Habakkuk, the prophet with the H, is that his book, the prophecy, is laid out interestingly. I don't know if you were gonna get into that, O'Shea. Am I stealing your thunder?
Not that I was really going to touch on. No.
Well, chapters 1 and 2, it's kind of a conversation. Like Habakkuk will raise a question, and God will answer, and Habakkuk will respond, and God will respond. And we don't see that. And that way, the prophets have conversations with God, but not like Habakkuk is laid out. And then we kind of get into chapter 3 with the application portion of Habakkuk's prayer and what he learned throughout this dialogue with God. So that's what I have.
Oh, and hi, Carol.
And yes, it is a tri-stream.
Yes, we try to do this every so often.
Just housekeeping before we get too far. Hey, look at that. You can actually see the fire now.
That is a better view.
I know it is. Little bit of housekeeping. Next Sunday, is it, or Monday?
Starting Sunday.
Starting Sunday, we are going to begin with our re-airing of the gospel edification meeting that brought CJ and I together for the very first time, which actually occurred about a month ago, but about a month ago, a whole year ago. I'll let you ponder that one. Anyhow, we will.
A month ago? No, it was the beginning of November, wasn't it?
It was the end of October. And we're almost to the end of November. So it was about a month ago.
I stand corrected.
So anyway, yes, it did carry over into a couple of days into November, but it began in October, at the end of October.
That's right.
So we begin that Sunday. We're going to re-air it, and we're going to laugh over how silly and dorky we both look, and probably all the mistakes that we've made.
I think in the edited video, in the videos, there'll be a couple blue slides that come up. Levi said this, but meant that. CJ said this, but meant that.
We did re-edit those and make sure that we made clarification of our remark or correction. And anyway, so while one of us, or maybe both of us, or all three of us, we don't know. We'll see how things play out. We'll be here to field, say hi and kind of run the show. Maybe even answer a question or two if you guys have some. We're not going to be in the picture other than typing. So, and that will run every night next week except Tuesday.
Yep.
So
they'll begin this Sunday and then end next Sunday, right? Yeah.
And that will override Young Brothers and Tri-Stream.
And Rowan's class. And then every other evening edification.
also, next Monday afternoon, we begin a new study to show ourselves approved at the 4:00 Eastern. And that will be with Nick Franklin as he takes us through the pages of Revelation. So we hope that you can join us in that study, that we may be approved. This was house cleaning with Levi. What in the world? Not breaking news with CJ.
I was going to do housekeeping at the end.
Yeah, CJ always gives us his breaking news at the end.
Yeah, but that wasn't actually breaking news because we've already broke that news like a week ago.
Well, you can continue breaking pieces.
I don't want to. I don't like breaking things. Then they don't work. Although I do like breaking ice. And occasionally I'll break bread.
Well, you do so every week, right?
Right? And we have broken ground. And once in a while, Ezra loves to break boards.
I break chunks of wood every so often.
You pick things up and set them down.
True.
So before we get too long,
I broke a handle. I broke a handle on a new mallet.
Oh,
today.
where?
When was this?
No, I was working for O'Shea's boss.
Okay. I'm thinking we haven't had a new handle on this yard property in ages.
I've made some new handles. What are you talking about?
Well,
not recently though. Anyhow, I was working landscaping with O'Shea's boss, and we were.
CJ all of a sudden trying to figure out how old my boss is.
He's older than I am. We were working down, putting in a retaining wall and a set of stairs.
Pounding
and he got a new mallet to pound spikes in to these boards with, so that we could set this retaining wall.
Long spikes.
Mm-hmm. And I hit the spike just right and broke the handle. The head went tail over tea kettle. O'Shea can tell you how far, because I think Larry told him.
30 feet. It flew 30 feet.
I took it home and made him a new handle. Or bought him a new handle and repaired it, one of the two.
Yeah. And now henceforth, every mallet over any size of weight has duct tape wrapped around the collar, just underneath the head.
That's funny.
For a special reason. Well, excuse you, CJ.
CJ, such words coming out of your mouth.
Wow. That was so bad. The spirit had to censor it.
No, that was so bad the Lord even censored it.
I was unfit for listening.
Oh, we're off the rails already.
We're off the railroad, all right.
Which is really funny when we get into Habakkuk saying, I have cried, but you have not heard me. And with that, I think we better get into Habakkuk before we all are reduced to a public.
Yes. Take me out of there, because I don't have the ability.
Bye. Alrighty. So here in Habakkuk 1, we are introduced to the prophet Habakkuk. And in verse 1, we have it titled, The Burden Which Habakkuk the Prophet Did See. And it was kind of, as you read through this, you can kind of see this as being a burden. Just Habakkuk's having to sit there, and he can see all the wrong that's being done all around him, and it troubles him deeply. He is distressed quite a bit. And we see that in verse 2. When he goes, "O Jehovah, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? I cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. And why dost thou show me iniquity, and look upon perverseness for destruction?" And he continues on. Habakkuk is distressed. And he's sitting there, you can see him in tears, and he's like, how long? I can see all this wrongdoing. I see violence. I see perverseness, destruction. And I cry to you, but you're not saying anything back. Habakkuk felt stranded. And we see that all the way through 4. We come to 5, and we have God sticking up his hand, and he says, "Behold, ye among the nations, and look, and wonder marvelously, for I am working a work in your days which ye will not believe, though it be told you. God says, I'm here, I'm working. He says, you look around at the nations, and you will see, wonder marvelously. He says, I'm going to do something which you won't even believe, is what he says. And we find, as we piddle through the year, verses 6 all the way through 11, that God says he's going to bring the Chaldeans, a bitter and hasty nation, and he's going to bring them as his judgment. And they are going to right the wrongs of Israel that Habakkuk was complaining about. And we come on down here to verse 12, which is my key verse. Verse 12. Art not thou from everlasting, O Jehovah? This is Habakkuk talking again. Art thou not from everlasting, O Jehovah, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Jehovah. Thou hast ordained him for judgment, and thou, O Rock, hast established him for correction. We have Habakkuk saying, trusting in God, he says, I see now. I understand. We won't die. You are sending the Chaldeans for judgment. Thou hast ordained him, the Chaldeans, for judgment. O Rock, thou hast established him for correction. He says, I see what you're up to now. I see your point. You're bringing the Chaldeans to correct Israel. And that's my key verse here. Habakkuk's trust, and it dawns on him almost that God will save and correct the wrongs. Because that was one of Habakkuk's problems up there, his complaints. I see all this wrongdoing and you're not doing anything about it. How can this be? He says. Well, here, after God telling him, Habakkuk's like, never mind, I understand now. I can see. And as we go through 13 through 17, we have this is God describing the Chaldeans a little bit more. And we see God uses the wicked for good purposes or teaching purposes. He uses the Chaldeans as judgment. And that is all I have on 1. Short, sweet, to the point.
Well, I had something on that section. I have a little bit of different take on what I see this as another verse 12 is saying I see your point, but verse 13, don't you realize that they're more wicked than the people you're trying to judge? Are you gonna use wickedness to stop wickedness? You are purified them to behold evil. You cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look on those who don't treacherously? And hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than you. Why do you make men like fish of the sea, or like creeping things that have no rule over them? He's saying, why are you? I see that they need to be judged. You appointed them for judgment. But why, he's kind of saying, why are you overcoming evil with a nation that's just as wicked, even more wicked than them? So I kind of see this section as I see your point, but he was
But
kind of
that's the whole thing, CJ.
objection.
Well, 12 is, I see your point. We're not going to die. What you've done is gone into verse 13 and used, and where Habakkuk brings up another question. But 12 was Habakkuk's realization of what God was doing. And then he's, oh, by the way, here's another question that I just thought of, for example. So Oshea is perfectly right in saying that 12 can be a key verse. 13 brings up, changes the topic.
Right.
So even though it is, you are right in that he says, I see your point, but
Right.
12 still maintains a key verse.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
It's Habakkuk surrendering. He realizes. Oh.
I see your point, but why does it have to be the Chaldeans?
right. And I mean, and he brings in, and when you look at this chapter, I mean, I don't want to get too off in the weeds because this is supposed to be just kind of like an overview of the book. But he brings up a question that a lot of people have in regard to God. That is, how can a loving God countenance such things as hell, for example, or an eternal punishment? Or if there is a God, how come there is cancer? And you fill in the blank. And that's the same sentiment that Habakkuk's seeing here, or giving voice to. You are of pure eyes to them behold evil. You can't look on perverseness. Why then are you going to be bringing? Why then are you even looking upon those who deal treacherously, and hold your peace when the wicked swallow up the man that is more righteous than he? And I think what he missed was the fact of what God was saying, is that he's going to bring them up as his rod of punishment. I'm trying to remember which verse that was in.
Oh, and I forgot to voice this. There in 5 where God says, I'm doing stuff, look at the nations. All you have to do is look around and see God's works.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing all that in secret.
And in verse 5 it kind of says, I'm going to tell you, but you're not going to believe what I'm about to do.
Right.
God states that already. You're not going to believe.
You're not going to believe this. And he almost anticipates verse 13. Anticipates the objection by saying, you're not going to believe this.
That's a funny idea. Can God even anticipate something? Considering he already knows it? Because that's God talking there in 5.
Well, what if we just say that he tried to head it off the path?
Okay. It's just interesting thought. Can God even anticipate something? Because anticipating implies uncertainty. A guess. And God already knows.
Well, not necessarily. I can anticipate if I'm gonna drop this weight, I know it's gonna this weight, sorry, it's not in my picture. If I anticipate it, I know it's gonna drop, but I just don't know when, right?
Right.
Well, and to anticipate means to prepare for.
Right.
Used in this kind of in this sense. So, for example, you could drop that weight, and you're anticipating it's going to hit your foot.
Right.
you may not exactly be ready for it to drop as fast as it does, but you have already figured out it's going to hit your foot.
I don't know why, but tonight I've been using things on my desk as illustration points. Like tonight in the program, I used the Reese's bar for an argument for intelligent design.
A Reese's bar?
Well, Kay brings it up. I thought it meant to be excited for an upcoming event. God can be excited for the time it takes place. I'm no. Well, we can anticipate it. We can anticipate an event. We can be excited for an event, or we can look at something with anticipation. In the verb sense, you're correct, Kay. But in the noun sense, as in God, or is it the other way around?
Verb is action, which would be excitement.
Well, but if the Lord anticipates his comment, that's actually a verb.
That is a verb.
Whereas if he looks with anticipation, that is a preposition. That's a prepositional phrase, so that'd be a noun sense. So in the verb sense, it is to prepare for something. In the noun sense, it would be to look with excitement, to eagerly await.
I always pictured it as calculating, to calculate.
No, I mean looking with anticipation on something is actually it is that excitement to eagerly await or to dread in some ways. But what we're looking at here is that he knows what Habakkuk is going to say,
Right.
and he essentially tries to prepare Habakkuk.
Yeah.
He says, I know that even though I'm tell you this, you're not going to believe it, like CJ was pointing out.
And Heike.
And people confuse God's foreknowledge with causing something to happen. Like the old illustration is two trains are headed to crash into each other. What?
I know exactly what Reba's talking about. Do you guys know?
Anticipation.
Do you know why she said that?
No.
Isn't there a commercial about that?
Possibly. But you see, originally Heinz ketchup came in glass bottles. And you would turn that glass bottle upside down, and it invariably would not come out. You may be anticipating that ketchup to come out, but it was not coming out. So you had to do one of two things. You either took a knife and reached up in there with that knife and pulled some out, or you hit the bottom of the bottle with your hand to get it to come out. And if you did that, you risked splattering ketchup all over everyone in the booth.
What I was saying with the train analogy is that God knows that if two trains are on the same track, God knows that they're going to collide. But that doesn't mean God causes them to do so. There's a difference in God's foreknowledge and God causing things to happen.
Just like
anticipation is making me crazy.
Just like you can be sitting there at a bench at a park and there's construction going on across the street, and you look up and you see this brick precariously hanging on a board, and all of a sudden it falls and it totals something out. Did you make that something happen?
The bricklayer
knew-
song.
Yeah. You knew that was going to break something. Now, does that mean you made it happen?
Foreknowledge. That's what Calvinist friends don't understand. Foreknowledge doesn't equal causation.
Well, that's taking us off into the weeds. Chapter 2. And you are exactly right. Foreknowledge does not equate to causing something.
Sorry about that.
That was just a random me idea. Can God anticipate? Yep.
Well, now we answered that. Yes, he
we
can.
Discussed that. Yep.
Habakkuk chapter 2 begins with, or rather continues Habakkuk's questioning of God. As we read in chapter 1, verses 12 through 17, or 13 through 17 in reality, he presents this question to God about whether or not, or how could he, a righteous God, stand to use or employ the unrighteous nation of the Chaldeans. How can a righteous God permit a wicked nation to triumph over his covenanted people? So as we turn our attention to chapter 2, then, he says, I'm going to stand on my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. He knows that essentially that God's going to answer him, and it's going to be a perfect answer. And the Lord does indeed answer him. And from verse 2 all the way through verse 20 is God's reply to this idea that the righteous God cannot look upon evil, and so why does he use a wicked nation? As we look at this, there are actually four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, four. Four important verses throughout this chapter. The first one we look at is verse 4. After God has told Habakkuk to write this vision and make it plain in verse 2, and it's kind of funny, the imagery here in verse 2. He says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. So whoever reads it is going to run. This is so terrible of a vision, or so awesome, awe-striking of a vision, that they're going to run in fear. He says in verse 4, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. So the arrogant soul is not upright within himself. We can understand that, right? An upright, someone who is arrogant, he's not righteous. He's full of himself. Paul said, love vaunteth not of itself. And we as Christians, for example, try not to put ourselves above our station. We try to be the servant. We try to be the one who is last, because we recognize that we are not worthy of being first. Well, the arrogant soul is not upright, but the just shall live by his faith. An interesting concept, and there are two cross references that you need to put into your Bible with these if you don't already have them. The first is Galatians chapter 3 and verse 11, where Paul uses this very verse, the phrase actually of this very verse. Galatians chapter 3 and verse 11, O'Shea is bringing it up for us. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident. For the just shall live by faith. And then the other verse, the other usage is in Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 38, where the Hebrew writer also draws a lesson from this verse. So Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 38 says, now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. These two passages can certainly bring some clarity to this verse if we will let them. God tells Habakkuk that the just shall live by his faith. What is it that mean? What does this mean? Romans 1:17. Bring it up for me, Shea. Alicia. And thank you. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. But what does it mean to live by his faith? Hebrews 11:1. Hebrews 11:6, James chapter 2. We can use all of these to define what it means to live by faith. Faith is evidence. Faith is substance. Faith is faith is believing that God exists and that he rewards those who seek him diligently. Faith is doing the commands of God, living righteously. So the just shall live by his faith, just as Abraham was justified by his faith, as we see in Genesis chapter 'Where'd I lose that? I think it's in Thank you, 15:6. And he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Abraham's faith in God gave him life, justified him, and it was counted as righteousness. Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. So that is, in actuality, my key verse for this chapter. God himself says that the just shall live by his faith. Faith is a set of principles, a hope by which we live by. It is our love of God in keeping his commandments. The next important verse we have is in verse 14 of Habakkuk chapter 2. After talking about the arrogancy, the evil of the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, he says in verse 14, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. We all know that the water, it just simply covers everything. If you go into the sea, can you see the seabed? No. Do you see the wrecks that are laying on the bottom of the sea? No. Why? Because the sea covers it. Well, so will the glory of the Lord fill, or the knowledge of the glory of the Lord fill the earth. It's going to fill the earth, just like the water fills the sea. It's going to cover everything, just like the water covers everything in the sea. And there is nothing evil that'll be able to stand. He continues casting judgment upon the Chaldeans, assuring Habakkuk that even though this wicked nation is going to punish Judah, they are not going to escape their own punishment, their own doom. God is indeed using this nation to pass judgment upon Judah, but will then pass judgment upon the wickedness that nation does. Our next verse, our third important verse, is 18. What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it? What is the profit of the graven image? Does the graven image profit by the fact that the maker made it? Of course not. What profit then? What is it that profits the molten image and the teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusteth therein to make dumb idols? God points out the stupidity of a person for making a wooden or a metal image. You can't carve a piece of wood and say this is God, because it's something you just made. You can't go and hammer out and pour a molten image and say this is God, because there again, you made it. So does your making it profit that image? Does it profit that wood or that metal? And if you're teaching lies, what profit do you have? All of us are going to be called into judgment for our actions and deeds. And if we're setting ourselves up as a idol or as a god, woe be unto us, because we're not profiting anybody by taking a place that is not ours to inhabit. And God is saying this in regards to Nebuchadnezzar, in regards to the Chaldeans. They set themselves up as gods. They create these images out of wood and metal and teach lies about these things that they have made of their own hands, these dumb idols. Look at verse 19 if you want the clarification of that. Awake to the woe to him that saith to the wood, awake. Woe to him that saith to the dumb stone, arise. It shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it. It is incapable of existing on its own. Finally, our last important verse is verse 20. In contrast to these images of wood and stone that men have made by their own hands, the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Those dumb idols keep silence before their creators. How much more should you and I, as the created, keep silence before our Creator? Some important thoughts that God gives to Habakkuk and for us to ponder. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, I just kicked you off.
I was trying to find a passage to go along with the idols idea. I talked about it in one of my classes, and I was trying to go back through.
The idols idea?
Yeah, I think it's in Isaiah, where he goes in length. And I think
Has Amos gone to bed yet?
I think in Psalms like 135, he just goes on. The psalmist goes to describe them. You know, eyes have they, but they see not.
yeah, that's the verse.
Yep.
Isaiah.
Is it 135?
Oh, no.
Psalm 135.
I
Yeah.
was thinking about Isaiah 44, 9 through 20.
Yes. Psalms 15 starts off, the idols of the heathen are silver and gold, the works of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. And he goes on to discuss
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, Isaiah says they bow down to him and then make carpets out of them and make wood. They worship one half of the idol and burn wood with the other half.
Or the psalmist finishes his segment on idols. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. Yeah.
I mean, you have some really good points in there about those idols. God doesn't just limit his disdain for people, for the idols, and for the people who make them, to Habakkuk. And you and I can be just as guilty of making idols today as they of Habakkuk's day.
Right.
I mean, who do we teach our kids to look up to? You stop and think about it. Who are we teaching our kids to look up to? We look up to sports figures like Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you keep going, Babe Ruth, etc., and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Or we teach them to look up to movie stars, heaven forbid. And you could go through and name a whole slew of different movie stars we want them to be like. And all the while, we push them into jobs or to try to seek jobs where they are going to have a lot of money. For example, doctors and lawyers. They're going to make lots of money in these type of positions, these type of jobs. So what have we made our kids? We teach them to look after sports figures or actors that make lots of money and go around. And don't forget the musicians that go around and party hard and are given to riotous living and dancing and clubbing and assaulting, each other as well as women and the opposite gender. And we teach them to go after gold and silver, as in money, riches, or wealth and power. We've made gods out of these people. and we stand condemned. I tell you what, who we should be teaching our kids to look up to is men that lead them or point them to Christ. Paul says, be imitators of me, but he qualifies that. Even as I am of Christ.
Only in the ways that I imitate Christ.
Exactly.
Don't imitate anything else I do, just the things that are like Christ.
So we need to, to really, really examine who we're teaching our kids to be like. We need to examine who we ourselves look up to. And we've been taught this, or we might have been taught this, and man, you and I, we're just fallible beings. We make mistakes. We fall flat on our noses. It was funny. I had a little girl on the bus today. One of her seatmates asked her, she said, "What did you do to your nose?" And she's like, "I was sledding on the snow and I scraped my nose." We do the same thing. We get going, we think we're having a lot of fun, and all of a sudden we realize that our nose is scraped because we fell flat on our face. We got our nose too close to the grindstone.
Grindstones are fun.
They can be. All right, anything else on chapter 2?
In verse 2, when he says, make it plain upon tables, that he that readeth it may run. Of course, me and my comical mind, I see them. They sit down at a table, they look at the table, and it's written on the table, and then they shriek and fright and jump up and run off.
Well, it's almost like, because it says in verse 3, the vision is not yet. It's for a later time, but it's coming soon. It's not gonna delay, so don't wait for it to come. Get a head start.
Well,
Terry, wait for it, because it will surely come.
I was going to say, it does tell them to wait for it. The vision is yet for an appointed time, which means it's the vision. You're going to see the vision. You can write it down. People are going to read it. And before it gets here, there is a certain time when it will be there. It's not yet, but it is coming.
Right.
And when it comes, it's going to be self-evident. It's going to speak, and it's not lying. People will remember it. It's like what happens when you see, when you're looking at the image of Christ on the cross, and you hear those faithful words of, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. When you look at him in anguish and pain, and you see the soldiers over there casting lots for his garments, and and Jesus, he giving up the spirit, and the sky going dark for 3 hours, ground shaking, and you just, all these things, these prophecies that are coming true right then and there, right in front of their faces, that it slapped some of those Pharisees right upside the face. It spoke to them, because that was so evident that those who had studied the scriptures would know it. And they should have been running. Okay, so anyway, it shall speak, shall not lie. Though it tarry, you wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry.
Right.
Yeah, so it is. This is like you have that pedestal with this open book on top of it, and anybody can read what's on the pages. And immediately, as soon as they see it, they glance at it, read it, and they run in the opposite direction. They're so scared of it and what it means. But anyway, I'll let you
So
speak.
now we get to kind of like the application in chapter 3. What a prophet learned
O'Shea, take us out of here.
by his prophecy. And back at 3, back at prayer.
I noticed something really interesting looking at StreamYard compared to Facebook. In cases anticipation make me wait here in StreamYard. In Facebook, it says making me wait was the slogan. It's like Facebook, or it's like StreamYard cut her off.
Oh,
Just weird.
on K?
Yeah. Her comment is anticipation making me wait here on StreamYard. In Facebook, it's actually anticipation making me wait was the slogan.
Oh. Yeah, because that's not what it says here, is it?
Oh, she says she edited it. Well.
Oh.
Well, you just confusing us like that. I'm looking back and forth between Facebook and StreamYard, and I'm wondering, what's going on? What happened? Anyway, thank you, Kay. Confusing me like that.
So actually, we do learn another thing about the prophet here in chapter 3, verse 1. He's the son of Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. He's not the son of. It's upon that. Is that an instrument? Or, yeah. Why did I? Yeah, upon that instrument. Sorry. I glanced at the Bible and I thought it said the son of, but it didn't. So here's the prophet's prayer and really his response. What did the prophet come to realize? He says, let this come, you know. I heard that speech and I was afraid. Oh Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known and wrath, remember mercy. Now that he's heard the full story, make it known. Yes, Israel's going to be judged, but the nation is not off the hook either. The nation who is exercising judgment will be judged as well. And from 2 through really 3 through 16 talks about the great deeds that the Lord's done for his people. He is the Lord who has covered the earth with his, covered the heavens with his glory. His brightness was like the light. Verse 5, before him went pestilence. Verse 6, he stood and measured the earth. He looked and startled the nations. Verse 8, O Lord, you were displeased with the rivers. Was your anger against the rivers? Was your wrath against the sea? That you rode on your chariots of salvation. Your bow was made quite ready. Ours was sworn over your arrows. Now, he's. I think that's in reference to. I'm not quite sure. Is Levi says that a reference to Israel crossing over of the Red Sea, or is that something else? Maybe that's Levi shaking his head. No. Yes, or he looks like he's thinking that's a good question. Anyways, we'll come back to that. While you divided the earth with rivers, the mountains saw you and trembled, the overflowing of waters passed by. I mean, look at the greatness of Jehovah. You marched through the land, verse 12, in indignation. You trampled the nations in anger. You went forth for salvation of your people, for salvation was your anointed. Haggai's point, Habakkuk's point is the Lord's always been there for his people, and he's not. He is beginning to understand that even though God's using a wicked nation, he is ultimately delivering his people again, just like he did all those other times. And then he says in verse 16 his original response to this prophecy, and that connects back to chapter 1. I heard and my body trembled. My lips quivered at the voice. Rottenness entereth into my bones. I trembled in my place because I must wait quietly for the day of trouble, for the coming up of the people that invaded us. That's how Habakkuk felt when God first said, I'm going to bring the Chaldeans. Well, his lips quivered because he was just waiting for this day of trouble. He's waiting for the people to invade us, take us over, wipe us out. And then in verses 17 through 21 is really the theme of the whole book, the key for this whole prophecy. For though the fig tree shall not flourish, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labors of the olive oil shall fall, and the field shall yield no fruit, even though this judgment's coming. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, there shall be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in Jehovah. I will joy in the God of my salvation. That's what Habakkuk learned in his exchange in chapters 1 and 2. Even though God's going to do this, even though things might not go my way, all around about me may crumble, yet I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. Jehovah the Lord is my strength. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that would connect back to 1. The end of there for the chief musician on my stringed instrument. Jehovah the Lord is my strength. He maketh my feet like hinds feet, and will make me to walk upon my high places. Even though things don't work out the way Habakkuk originally thought it would, through explaining he knows God's truth will prevail. And that is the book of Habakkuk. And the lesson is that even though the things might not work out the way we want them to, and we might not understand what God's doing, like Habakkuk said, what are you doing? Why don't you see this? Habakkuk starts out, don't you see what's going on? Why aren't you responding? And then this prophecy ends with a prayer of hope, renewal, and restoration of faith by the prophet. I will rejoice in the Lord, and I will joy in the God of my salvation. And that is Habakkuk 3.
You were asking the question over, was it 8?
Yeah, is that the... It does. Is that the time, is that an allusion to the Red Sea or not?
Not directly that I know of. Could it be? Possibly.
It looks like one of those bridges that, whether it's supposed to be or not, it's kind of a neat idea, anyways.
Well, I mean, you notice that there's a lot of things happening in this, and what we're really dealing with in 3 through 16 is God's past judgments.
Right.
How that they all came, God judged righteously, God judged, and they came true and happened. So when we look at them in this context, we can relate several of these to different events that went on in the scriptures. We could look at, for example, in verse 6, he stood and measured the earth. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow, and his ways are everlasting. If you turn over to Genesis chapter 10.
Driving the nations asunder?
When we look at where was it?
Hey, Darlene. Facebook says she's watching.
Sister Love's in the house.
In Genesis 10 verse 8 we have Cush. Well, actually we have him in 6 through 8, but we also then in verse 25 have the son of Eber, which the first one was Peleg, and the reason why his name was Peleg was because in his days was the earth divided. This can mean one of two things. It could mean that the earth was separated because of languages, as in the Tower of Babel, or it could mean that the earth was literally torn asunder, as in the continents came into being because of the flood. This was how long it took for the effects of the flood to subside. More than, I mean, what my actual take on it is, of course, is the actual Tower of Babel. But do I have any proof? No. That's just supposition. However, the earth was divided in Peleg's day. What do we have here? Drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow, and his ways are everlasting. So we have some geographical anomalies being happening, which really lends itself to the idea of the continents tearing themselves apart. What happened when you have the fountains of the deep ripping apart the earth? You have the tectonic plates being pushed.
Mountains fell in that day.
Mountains rising.
Right.
And hills being lowered.
And you could call them everlasting because until that point, that's what they were.
Verse 7, I saw the tents of Cushan. That would be a descendant of Cush, or the descendants of Cush. In affliction, the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? Was thy wrath against the sea? That thou didst ride upon thy horses and thy chariots of salvation or escape. Depends upon which version you're reading. So we could look at that as when God dried up the Red Sea and allowed the nation to cross. But Ethiopia was not from Cush. Or Egypt, I should say, was not from Cush. I believe that was part of the other one of the other ones.
And the Egyptians did not ride chariots of salvation in that event.
That's why the word actually could also mean escape.
Oh. They didn't escape that event either.
If I remember correctly, Egypt came from Japheth.
Yeah, I think a lot of this right here can be tied back to right after the flood. I mean, the question he asked, displeased with the rivers or angry against the rivers, riding upon his horses and chariots. A lot of water damage happened there during the flood.
Well, there wasn't mention of chariots in the text in Genesis 6-9.
No, but he's using metaphorical language there almost. You could describe God riding angrily upon horses or chariots there as he uses the water to judge all the nations there at the flood.
And you could also, and again, you could look at it because remember, what did Elijah, pretty sure it was Elijah, show his servant when they were in the city of Samaria? They thought the servant thought they were trapped, but he showed God's host riding on chariots of fire from the hills, right? Anyhow, but the thing of it is that when we look at this, what do we know? We know that God's judgment came true, and God's judgment was just.
Right.
And this is what the prophet is relaying in his psalm, in his prayer, is that no matter when God was angry, God was just in what he did. The other option about these rivers is, remember that when Israel entered the land of Canaan, what happened?
God stopped the waters of Jordan, wasn't it?
Right. And where did they go? They walked through on dry ground.
Right. Into Canaan.
And from that point forward, God was exercising judgment upon the lands or the nations or the tents of Cushim.
Right.
the Philistines for certain were descended from Ham
Oops.
and from Cush. And we can continue on like that. But then, as you get down here, just a few verses on in 11, you have exactly what happened when Joshua prayed, when Joshua said,
Right.
let the sun stand still over the valley of Arnon and the moon over the valley of whatever it was.
Right.
And it happened. So, you can kind of lay the judgment aspect of 8 upon several different occurrences of God stopping rivers, or of mountains being shifted, earthquakes, etc.
Right.
Habakkuk's hinting at a lot during
So
this.
it's yes and.
Maybe.
It is a possibility.
It's an ish kind of.
Moment.
Let's put it this way. It is certainly within the realm of
possibility.
It's certainly within the realm of a yes.
Yes.
And a no.
It's not probably it's not exclusive to that one event.
Right.
That was
not knowing, can't say. For sure.
Yeah.
You let him finish his sentence, O'Shea.
There's an interesting that's something to talk about off stream. I was gonna go back to Genesis 10 and 11, but that's an interesting study for another day.
That's right. We're not in Genesis class yet. You're going to have to wait till after Revelation and Romans.
Yep, you're going to just sit there and burn with anticipation.
Yeah. You're just gonna take the open spot.
Like we said before, you anticipate it because you know it's going to drop, but you just don't know when.
There's uncertainty in anticipation.
All right. Well, definitely a good book to remind us that it is okay.
Sorry. I saw Rivas.
That's how long we'll be in Acts.
Or Romans.
Yeah.
It is Habakkuk's a good book to remind us that it's okay to question God. But we shouldn't do so in our own arrogancy.
Amen.
It is also a good book to remind us that when we question God, wait for his answer.
Look around.
Just because he doesn't answer us in a still small voice like he did the prophet Elijah in the cave, or he doesn't answer us directly from heaven like he did when Jesus was baptized or transfigured,
or like you spoke to Abraham,
and he doesn't move us or talk to us with the Holy Spirit like he did to the apostles or the men and the prophets. We have his word, and his word is sure. His word is faithful. His word is everlasting. And we can go to his word. We can wait upon his timing. And that's the beautiful thing about a life with God, waiting upon him as he provides for us, whether it be an answer to our question or whether it be a specific need that we have at a specific time. God always knows the proper time for what we need.
Point to God's answers to your questions here. God has an answer for your question.
Yes, you can also submit it to CJ, but he's not God.
Right.
Just a representative. Representatives are standing by.
But he does have a very good program where he and is it only one now, or you back up to two brethren that join him.
Was it Curtis?
One on Wednesday and one consistently on Friday. Sometimes two, Nick and Jim.
So he's got some faithful, sound brethren that'll pop in and help him with questions, and he knows that he can grab one of them by the ears and drag him kicking and screaming over to his stream to answer your question.
Right. CJ drags people,
and that's really what we here at CEM are here for. CJ, what are we here for?
To glorify God, edify the saints, and answer any spiritual questions you may have. Help you grow and edify you.
That way, whether we wake tomorrow here on this earth to serve God, or we wake up there tomorrow to serve Him there, you know where we'll be, because we'll see you then. God bless.
Thank you all for being here, for studying with us. Your questions, your presence is always appreciated. It really makes this stream what it is. And till we meet again, God bless you all. Love you. Bye-bye.
Catch you!
Oh, before we go, sorry.
Oh, breaking news with CJ.
Just tomorrow night is our Romans class, and then remember, like Levi said at the beginning of the stream, Sunday night through Sunday night is our week-long gospel edification meeting. We play. One of us or all three of us will be here to answer questions. Thank you all. Good night.
Remember, it's Friday night. We're going to be a little bit goofy here at CEM, especially. Night, y'all.